Hello, I'm Oliver Colling, and this is my 70s TV childhood at, can I say it? Not too early? This is my 70s TV childhood at Christmas. Hello, and a warm welcome to a festive themed edition of my 70s TV childhood. It's hard to believe that this is our 6th Christmas special edition, and we can still find lots to say about that time of year when families get together, Santa comes down the chimney and turkeys start to get very nervous. If you're new to us, then a very special welcome to you. We are a podcast dedicated to celebrating what it was like to grow up as a child in 1970s Britain, and the special part that television played in our and our society's lives back then. In the 1970s, television was a unifying factor which brought families together to share in the same viewing experience and to become closer, in my opinion, as a result. Don't forget, there was no catch-up, or much in the way of video recording. No, if you wanted to watch a show on TV, then you had to be there in front of the box at the time it was shown. Otherwise, you missed it. And this feeling of togetherness and family was never stronger than at Christmas. From the arrival in our house of the double editions of the radio and TV Times, we all knew we were in for a festive telly-watching treat. In the 1970s, some of the biggest ever ratings for TV shows were recorded on Christmas Day. Shows like Mike Yarwood and, of course, Morecambe and Wise gained audiences of tens of millions of Brits who, having enjoyed a traditional turkey dinner, then slumped into their armchairs for the Queen's Christmas message and didn't move again for several hours. As children, we were often conflicted. Did we watch along with the grown-ups, or did we carry on playing with our presents? Quite a dilemma. One solution to which was to play with presents on the floor at the same time as everyone was watching Eric and Ernie. This sometimes backfired, though, especially as my grandfather had a habit of standing on some of my new toys, as, to be fair, he couldn't see very well. My Samuto corner kicker didn't make it to Boxing Day. Oh well. But part of being a child at Christmas in the 1970s was not only having lots of great television to choose from, but the prospect of waking up on Christmas morning to find lots of lovely presents at the end of your bed for the big man himself. Yes, Father Christmas was waited for excitedly, and the build-up began weeks beforehand as we started to gear up to Christmas at school. As I look back upon this time last year, the build-up to Christmas seems to go on forever and ever, and then, suddenly, the day itself arrives, and before you know it, it's over. The build-up at our primary school went on for weeks with rehearsals for the nativity play, which in our school seemed to get trendier and trendier as the 70s wore on, reflecting the changing times, I suppose. What had started as a rather dishevelled group of us wearing dressing gowns and towels on our heads, dressed as shepherds, obviously, because every shepherd in Galilee wore their dressing gown when they were out in the field. We got more and more sophisticated, including, I remember on one occasion, a South Sea Island-themed nativity, which was all good fun, but I can't actually remember what connection it actually had to Christmas. Anyway, we'd all sit down in class and write letters to Santa and spend time making decorations, mainly bits of tinsel and those paper chains. Do you remember? The ones where you sort of loop together lots and lots of loops of paper, which we'd all take home and insist that our parents put up. I wonder how many houses suffered from fires from those paper chains and the tinsel, as I think they'd have all been lethal had they caught alight. So, as the weeks went by, the excitement headed towards frenzy, and the speculation as to what would arrive from your Christmas list went on. Had I asked for too much, or too little? What would happen if he didn't come to our house? Had he even got my letter? And stoking the flames of that were the incessant, endless streams of Christmas toy adverts which bombarded young viewers with slick advertising and hidden messages.
Kaplunk and Buckaroo, 2 games of suspense from Ideal. Now you need patience to play Kaplunk. You just pull out the sticks without letting any marbles fall, because when they do... Now, Buckaroo. You take turns putting boots and buckets and just about everything you can get your hands on Buckaroo. But carefully does it, because you never know when he's going to... Buckaroo, partner! Kaplunk and Buckaroo. They're both ideal.
But outside of the hype, what toys and games do we really want in the 1970s? Well, I have been lucky enough to get hold of the list of best-selling toys and games from each year of the 1970s. So let's take a trip down memory lane and see how many of these you remember. Whether you have them or whether you never got them, it should be an interesting read. Right, so we shall start off with 1970. The top 5 in 1970, number 5 was Talking Viewmaster. Now, I had a Viewmaster, but I never came across a talking one, so I'd be really interested to hear if anybody did manage that. In 4th place was the board game Risk, which I think is a classic that's still going strong and that I'm sure many of our listeners have happy memories of playing and perhaps still do play. At 3 in the charts was a model of the Apollo moon rocket, which I guess sort of ties into the time. As we said in many episodes previously, space was huge in the early 1970s. And as we're recording, I've been reminded that 50 years ago today, there were men on the moon. In 2nd place was the Cindy doll, which, were all very popular, those Cindy dolls. My sister had 2 or 3 at least, I think. But in number 1 was the Nerf ball. Now, I just remember the Nerf ball. They were little foam balls. Don't think we had one ourselves. But as trends come and go, in 1970, the Nerf ball was it. Going on to 1971, some really interesting ones here. In 5th position was the Etch-a-Sketch. Again, I think a timeless classic, one that's still going strong. But then in 4th place were clackers. Do you remember those? Yeah, very irritating, very annoying, but obviously very popular in 1971. And in 3rd position were the Weebles. Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down. And again, very, very popular for many years after that. Something a bit more suave and sophisticated at number 2, which was the Mastermind game. Always a challenging one. We got that, and there was a lovely picture of the man with a huge moustache and 2 very glamorous women on the box, which was very, very 1970s, but a great game. And in 1st place in 1971, the archetypal 1970s toy, the Space Hopper. Now, hands up, how many of you actually had Space Hoppers? I bet there's lots of you who remember them fondly. And, they're still seen as such a symbol of what the 1970s was all about. On to 1972. What have we got here? In 5th place, we had a talking doll. Yes, I remember those. They started to take shape. Pull the cord in the back, and they say something like, "I love my mummy." In 1972, at number 4, we had the Easy Bake Oven. No stereotyping involved there, getting little girls to play with ovens and start making things, baking cakes and tea and things like that. In 3rd place was Plasticraft, which was one of those plasticine modelling toys. I do remember that. Something very simple at number 2 was the Uno card game. One of those ones that I've never been able to get the hang of, and never been able to even really understand it, but I'm sure it's very popular with many of you. And number 1 in 1972 was the skateboard. Yeah, skateboards started coming onto the market in 1972 and were very, very popular for the next few years before they went down a bit and then came back again when they became very cool in the late 80s and into the 90s. Let's have a look at 1973. In 5th place were the Lone Ranger and Tonto. Understand that? 4th place, My Baby's Alive doll. Don't remember that one myself, but more realistic toys and dolls coming along. And number 3, walkie-talkie sets. I always wanted a walkie-talkie, but never actually got one, which was a bit of a shame, but very popular indeed. Number 2 were Shrinky Dinks. Yeah, I remember those, I think. They were the sort of craft kits where you shrank stuff over them, made badges and things like that. And number 1 was one of the things that I really wanted but never had. It was the Evel Knievel stunt cycle. Still very jealous for anybody that had that. As we move into 1974, taste starts to change a bit. In 5th position was the all-time classic game Twister. You played at any age, depending on your physical condition and arthritis and whatever. And very simple and lots of fun. Now, number 4 was Spirograph. I don't know about you, but my sister and I loved Spirograph, which when we had to have these wheels within wheels, and you had your ballpoint pen, and you drew round and round and round and round and round to create lots of sort of funky geometric patterns. Very good. I remember that. I miss that. In third place was the Magic 8 Ball. Yeah, vaguely remember that. Dungeons and Dragons at number 2, never really my thing. And Rock Sock Robots at number 1, which again, I have vague memories of, but not much. So please tell us if you had a Rock Sock Robot. 1975, we're starting to move into, well, a different type of present. Although number 5 was the staple Monopoly. And Monopoly, having been created in about 1930, I think, as a response to the Wall Street crash, was still going strong, was the 5th most popular toy in 1975. But at number 4, we have a portable cassette player or recorder. Do you remember cassettes? Yeah, it seems like ancient history now, but they were such a thing. And I think I got my first one in about 1977, so I was a couple of years behind this. At number 3 in the charts was the Othello board game. That was another one which I could never really get. I don't think my brain was wired quite right for Othello, but again, hugely popular. And at number 2 was The Shape of Things to Come. It was the Pong home video game, which I remember my cousin had. And they brought it around to our house when we all got together for a New Year's party. And we all sat there for hours, mesmerised by the blip, bloop, blip, bloop, and play, well, tennis, but basically 2 lines on a computer screen with the ball game between them. We thought it was marvellous. And number 1 in 1975, another trend, was the pet rock. Anyone remember that? Anyone still have a pet rock? Probably not. On to 1976. 1976, in 5th place were kites. Kites had a comeback. They've been going for hundreds of years, but they're very popular in 1976, as was in 4th place the pogo stick. I could never quite handle the pogo stick very well. I never had one myself, but I normally used to, if I borrowed one from a friend, I'd get going and then sort of lose my balance and fall over. So I probably wasn't a natural pogo stick rider, if that's the right term. And in 3rd place was the Magna Doodle, if you remember that. That was a bit like an Etch-a-Sketch, I seem to remember. Except I don't think you had to do it in straight lines and right angles. There's another doll in 2nd place, Cher doll. Don't remember that one, but presumably based on the famous pop star and actress of the same name. And number 1 was the Micronauts, which I think those were little tiny toys, little tiny cars, figures, the whole lot from memory. Moving on to 1977, and we can see some trends coming in here. The 5th most popular item was a portable 8-track player. And I thought cassettes were long gone. If you remember the 8-track, I remember my uncle had one in his car where he had those sort of 8-track cassettes that you put in. Well, a portable 8-track player was very popular in 1977, as was in number 4, the Batmobile, which I think probably came back in during the 90s and the 2000s as well. And number 3 in 1977 was Stretch Armstrong. Again, something that I'd really wanted to get but never had. Having looked at it now, and yes, how much fun could you get out of stretching his arms? Probably limited amounts over a number of years. But then at number 2, we start to see the influence of some of the big trends that go on for decades. And we have Star Wars figures, figurines and toys. Very, very popular in 1977, coinciding with the release of the film. And number 1 in 1977 was the Atari 2600. Video games move on very quickly. We had Pong in 1975, but by 1977, we're actually getting more complicated games, things that actually look a little bit like the things they're supposed to be representing. 1978, what have we got here? In 5th place, we've got Matchbox Power Tracks. I used to love those. I never had the Power Track, but a friend of mine did, and that was great. Just shooting these little cars around the hoops and the wheels and so on. In 4th place was Connect 4. Again, timeless game. Never tire of that. But again, number 3, we've got Simon, the electronic age. Remember that, where the lights flash and you had to repeat what the lights did you in the same sequence. Simon says, beep, 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 etc. And number 2 was Speak and Spell. Again, early computerization here, Speak and Spell, but also quite educational, which is a bit of a surprise. And number 1, still going strong, I believe, was Hungry Hippos. Great game to play, lots of fun for all the family, very wholesome. Which brings us on to 1979. What have we got here? Well, in 5th place, we've got Lego Space Sets. Lego, a contender every year in my book. In number 4, we've got Meccano construction sets. Again, a classic, rebooted for a newer age. And number 3, this really is a sign of what's to come. Number 3 in 1979, the third most popular was the Sony Walkman. Times changing. And in 2nd place was the Star Wars model of the Millennium Falcon. Star Wars still having its influence as the film series were released. And number 1 in 1979 was the Strawberry Shortcake doll, which I don't have much memory of. I'd recognise the name, but I think perhaps some of our female listeners, not that I want to stereotype, might be able to help us better on that. So that's quite interesting going through that list. Any surprises there? It certainly brought back some memories for me. It's remarkable how many of these toys were ones which I thought I wanted, probably due to the TV advertising, but never actually had. And also interesting to see which ones have stood the test of time. Some of them are genuinely timeless, like Monopoly, Etch-a-Sketch and Twister, whereas others have their moment in the sun before disappearing very quickly into the shadows. Pet rock, anyone? So what does that tell us about how we developed in the 1970s? Well, by the time we get to 1979, we were certainly starting to go down the electronic computer route, with Simon and the Sony Walkman entering the scene. And it also shows that perhaps the onslaught of adverts that we had every year were more effective on us rather than our parents, who actually went out and bought all of this stuff. No sign of Operation Buckaroo or Mousetrap in the bestseller lists, despite them being advertised to the point of brainwashing on children's television. It shouldn't be surprising, though, when I look back, the presents seem less and less important the older I get. And what really comes through are the happy memories of sharing Christmas as a family, and a feeling that they're all together, spending time enjoying each other's company in a way which perhaps we didn't always do all the time. And that, for me, is priceless. What were your favourite 70s toys and games? What were your treasured moments together as a family at Christmas, and did they involve television? Do let us know by leaving a comment on our blog at www.my70stvchildhood.com or on our social media sites on Facebook, Twitter /X, YouTube, Instagram and LinkedIn. Alternatively, you can email Oliver at my70stvchildhood.com. That's all we have time for now. We will be back next week with our Christmas quiz, where all our questions have been supplied by our lovely listeners. So that should give you something to challenge your friends and relatives with as you decide whether to have another mince pie or not during the festive season. Until then, we wish you and all you love a very happy Christmas and hope you'll join us again soon for more from My 70s TV Childhood. Ho, ho, ho.